intend to continue taking all necessary measures to deprive looters of public assets of the fruits of their crimes.
President Buhari receives audit report on recovered assets, pledges to deprive looters fruits of their crimes.
(2019) general elections, strategy for security arrangements on the way.
By the rail line by December this year.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on Nigerian voters and the 2019 general elections.
Every day brings us closer to the 2019 general elections, and so do activities leading to the D-Day keep increasing, as there is no day that passes without news of major political events taking place.
That's right, Joy. Now we keep witnessing the indication of interest as well as collection of nomination forms by aspirants, while political parties, the electoral umpire, and security agencies are perfecting their strategies towards hitch-free polls next year.
Yes, Kingsley. There are also alignments and realignments, consultations and consensus, defections and resignations from one party to another, accusations and counter-accusations, banters, mockeries and teases.
All right, and that's expected at this time, Joy, and notwithstanding the dizzying pace at which some of this have occurred, none of the happenings is new, and we are witnessing what, of course, will continue until the primary elections are over sometime next month, and then attention will shift to the main campaigns, where another round of engagements will begin.
Well, one of the major players in this electoral process seems to be quiet for now, Kingsley, and I'm referring to the voter whose nod is what is responsible for all that we mentioned above, and whose action will determine who becomes what.
Again, you're spot on, Joy. Now, the voter is king, who is to be wooed by all the candidates and political parties to accept their ideologies and promises, and then key also into their proposed programs and policies by voting for them in the course of the elections.
And there are queens as well, Kingsley. Remember, women constitute a bulk of the voters. And you know, the days where women only vote is over, as they are now striving to be voted for as well.
Well, yes, I said voters are king in a generic sense, but I was just using that to stress the importance of the voter in the election process, and of course not trying to sideline the women folk who constitute quite a sizable percentage, and most of whom you find on the voting queues. And I know that affirmative action is reverberating at the highest level, and particularly also at this period. Now, let the electorate decide. That is what is often said. And when will the electorate get more into the process?
That's good to hear, Kingsley. But then, what is the voter doing at this time in the electoral process? Why is the voter not being heard? When should the voter be visible? What programs are the security, INEC, civil society organizations, and even politicians and political parties supposed to have for the voter at this time in the process? Who should educate the electorate on what is expected before, during, and after the elections? And what are they really doing concerning the political process? Talking about the electorate now.
That's right, Joy. You've raised very pertinent questions. Of course, our guests in the course of the conversation segment will address some of those questions. But it's also a question to ask what sense the voter can make of the current occurrences on the political scene. As we indicated, you've seen a dizzying array of movements by politicians, the seasonal migration that we have seen, oftentimes not underlaid with any form of ideology.
That's right.
Yeah, the parties, of course, are shifting. The candidates and the individuals themselves are also shifting, but the voter had been persuaded up until the end of last month for the voter registration exercise to go get his or her PVC. Now you have your PVC. That's right. Now you have your PVC. What do you do? But one leg of it, of course, is going to kick in sometime next week when the parties begin to have their primaries. Right. Well, of course, as they're having their primaries, this is intra-party. That you have to be a member of a political party to participate in those primaries. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and it's on that note that we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of Africa's largest television network. That's the Nigerian Television Authority.
And I am Joy Usiago, thanking you for joining us on this edition. And as usual, we shall present our companion segments, which include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. First, let's take the news highlights with Anne Jibuna. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, Joy and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. And here's the news this morning. The federal government says it will continue to take all the necessary measures towards not only eliminating corruption, but depriving looters of public assets, the fruit of their crimes, until Nigeria triumphs over the cankerworm for prosperous economic status. President Muhammadu Buhari gave the assurance while receiving the report of the Presidential Committee set up to audit recovered assets by ministries, departments and agencies.
Will truly assist them.
In another development, President Muhammadu Buhari has formally received the expression of interest and presidential nomination forms bought for him by the Nigeria Consolidation Ambassadors Network, asking all other groups with similar offers to reassign their contributions to the not too young to run wing of the APC. The president said any remaining fund raised for his nomination forms should also be used in supporting the aspirations of the young, competent and dynamic future leaders whom he believes have a lot to contribute.
We now have a party of strong and patriotic individuals who are ready, willing and able to continue on this journey of building a strong, secure, self-sufficient and corruption-free Nigeria.
These ambassadors reached a AAA assessment of the performance of this government.
Strategy for security arrangements preparatory to the 2019 general elections underway in all ramifications. Timothy Yusuf reports on the Interagency Consultative Committee meeting on election security, which took place in Abuja.
It is very important for you to pass this message down the line to all your operatives. Any coloration of complicity by any of your staff will be viewed with the seriousness it deserves.
Now, against all odds, the federal government has pledged to deliver the Lagos-Ibadan rail line in December this year, while other sub-sectors of transportation are receiving attention to enable the sector play its role as an important component of the nation's economy. Reiterating this pledge in an interactive session with journalists in Abuja, the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Chibuike Amechi, said the federal government has approved $495 million to secure Nigerian waterways.
We have changed the alignment from the one from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. The alignment is from Port Harcourt straight to Maiduguri. Then there are two spots in the alignment, from Port Harcourt to Owerri to Nnewi to Awka. Awka, you jump across at Enugu and go to Abakaliki.
The National Space Research and Development Agency has released a preliminary investigation report on the Abuja Earth tremors.
But definitely there must be underlying fault line there, to which this blasting might have aggravated it. And that is one thing. Mostly when you have a particular fault line in a particular place, the major thing you do is to make sure that such activities are minimized.
Meanwhile, flood continues to wreak havoc in different parts of Jigawa State, claiming lives, destroying farmlands and rendering many residents homeless. To ease some of the hardship of the affected persons, the state government has directed the immediate release of relief materials to the victims.
3 days ago, we got notice that there was flooding in certain areas, and we immediately asked the State Emergency Management Agency to send relief materials in the form of food and some canoes which they had in their stores.
Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Joy and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped. We are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1, the delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water.
Now you can save even more with Ariel's brilliant stain removal. Just by buying its bigger, better 90-gram economy sachet. You get more value with Ariel 90 grams by saving a whopping 25 naira. Start saving now. Ariel, Nigeria's best stain removal in one wash.
Whenever pain occurs, you want quick relief. Try new Nurofen Express. It goes to the source of pain and gets to work in under 15 minutes. That's why Nurofen Express delivers fast and effective relief. New Nurofen Express works at the source of pain. Fast.
Being a mom is great, but when your child has a fever, you don't know what to do. I trust Nurofen for Children to take care of my child's pain and fever.
Effective relief you can trust.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. Every day, 16,000 children under the ages of 5 and thousands of adults die from infectious diseases. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's One Capsule for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure, endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
Use Dettol Skin Jelly, which protects against germs for a healthy, smooth skin every day.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria.
Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
I can taste the real chicken.
Real chicken. Don't worry, Abba. It's not your chicken.
It's the Sedap Supreme Chicken Essence that gives it the supreme chicken taste. Be Supreme, Nigeria.
For some business news on Good Morning Nigeria, let's join Chimaobi Walter Naji.
Thank you for joining us. We begin with the Debt Management Office, who has reacted to recent comments on borrowing by developing countries from China following the outcome of the Forum on China-African Cooperation Summit and claims of potential seizure of national assets by Chinese lenders in some African countries, even though the claims have not been validated. The DMO, in an effort to allay the fears of the people, have explained Nigeria's borrowing from China, pointing out that there is no reason to panic and therefore consider it imperative to inform Nigerians that in line with the agreement, government's borrowing from China is subject to the receipt of requisite approvals and may raise capital from several domestic sources to finance capital projects to promote economic growth and development and job creation. The Debt Management Office, as a result, Nigeria has access to more long-term concessional loans, given the country's infrastructure deficit, which needs to be urgently addressed. In a related development, the Federal Ministry of Finance has also given clarifications on the Paris Club refund approved for the 36 states of the Federation. According to a press release by the Director Information Federal Ministry of Finance, Hassan Dedo, 4 major points were raised to buttress the point that the federal government played its part in ensuring the states were carried along. According to him, the issue of Paris Club loan over deduction had been a long-standing dispute between the federal government and the state governments, which dated back to the period of 1995 to 2002. In response to the dispute, President Muhammadu Buhari directed that the claims of over-deduction should be formally and individually reconciled by the Debt Management Office. This reconciliation commenced in November 2016 as an interim measure to alleviate the financial challenges of the state during the 2016 recession. The president had approved that 50% of the amounts claimed by states be paid to enable the state clear salary and pension arrears. This, according to the report, was released between 1st December 2016 and 29th December 2017 as part of the government's fiscal stimulus to ensure the financial health of sub-national governments. The report also indicated that the DMO led the reconciliation process under the supervision of the Federal Ministry of Finance. And that report leads us to the closing figures of trades on the floor of the exchange. And that's it in business news. Thanks for watching. I'm Chimaobi Walter Naji.
Thank you very much, Chimaobi, for the business package and Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us now, we take a look at the front pages of today's newspapers in our review segment.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyobi, is here with us this morning. Good morning, Bayo. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Nigeria.
All right, so let's begin. We have politics, and we also have stories on the economy. But for the two papers, New Telegraph and Leadership, the story is on politics. That's in terms of the lead story.
Yes.
And so let's go straight away to the Leadership newspaper. Leadership newspaper, the lead story says, we may shift 2019 polls over threat of violence. That's according to INEC. And two riders there, APC presidential aspirants kick as President Muhammadu Buhari picks form. And PDP governors, presidential aspirants fail to agree on consensus. And details of that story can be found on page 4. And for the New Telegraph newspaper, the lead story is on politics, but straight out of Lagos. And it says, Tinubu, Fashola rattle Ambode. Ambode is incumbent, and Tinubu and Fashola are his predecessors. As governors' associates pick governorship forms, Lagos leaders weighed in. Protest as governor denies 18 lawmakers return tickets. And APC adopts Buhari as sole presidential candidate. Details of the story can be found inside. And immediately above that lead story, below the nameplate, we have a window of 4 headlines there. Let's take a look at 3 of them, because 2 of them actually are related to politics, and the others matters arising. Consensus presidential candidate divides PDP governors. Lamido tackles Atiku. Vote buying, that is see and buy. National Security Advisor warns security operatives. That's on page 31. Federal government recovers 769 billion naira from public officials, page 5. And thieves raid Leah Sharibu's family home, page 8.
All right, let's go quickly to the Pilot and the Guardian, and let's start with the Pilot. The lead story there, the kicker, Buhari blows hot, comes with 4 riders, says Saraki, Tambuwal, Ahmed, others weak, selfish, that they are self-seeking politicians who couldn't align with APC's vision, accepts re-election nomination form from NCAN, insists he's on track in his mission to rescue Nigeria. Now, below that, you see a picture where President Muhammadu Buhari, you see him receiving APC presidential nomination and expression of interest forms from the members of Nigeria Consolidation Ambassador Network, who purchased the forms for him at the State House. That was yesterday. And below the picture is this other headline. PDP challenges EFCC to probe Tinubu over alleged 160 billion naira fraud. You can get details of that story on page 11. And for the one about Buhari blowing hot, details on page 4. Now, let's move quickly to The Guardian to see what we have there as our lead story. Fresh trouble for Ambode over second-term move. It comes with 2 riders. 57 cancelled chairs back Sanwo-Olu. Otedola accepts PDP ticket. Party wants EFCC to probe alleged Tinubu's 160 billion naira tax fraud.
Before we talk about this political development, let's just do an update on the human interest story that happened about Lafia yesterday. The death toll in the Lafia gas explosion has increased from 2 to 9. Governor Umaru Tanko Almakura described the day as a mourning one for the people of Nasarawa, and he said initially 6 persons had died, 2 others died later on, including a baby who brought the total number to 9. But the governor has made very bold initiative. He said those who are seriously burned should be referred to the National Hospital, and if possible, they require further treatment, they should be taken abroad for treatment. Meanwhile, the governor has directed restriction of movement in the area around that gas facility, because there is need to monitor any leaking instances. Already, he has directed that there should be a review of policy regarding failing stations and structures, and this should be nothing less than 100 meters away from residential areas across the states. Now, talking about politics, the President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday accepted the expression of interest and nomination form that was provided for him by an association that called itself National Consolidation Ambassadors Network. And in that remark, that was where he made a remark that those who defected from the All Progressive Congress are selfish and the weakest members who could not align with the vision of the administration. Joy, you were reading, in fact, a paper that was naming names. I don't think the president actually named names. He only made a general statement. And in July, the ruling party suffered a grave defection, gale of defection. 3 governors and some members, dozens of lawmakers from the National Assembly, including some of the leaders. Conversely, however, the party has also gained recently from some other leading minority party persons who have also jumped onto its ownership. The National Secretary of the All Progressive Congress, Mai Mala Buni, says that with the National Executive Council vote of confidence in the president, it means that there's a demonstration of the NEC as a party and has passed vote of confidence in the president, and therefore nobody can contest against the president. He, however, said that any other member interested in the presidential race is free to pick up a nomination form. This issue of internal democracy is generating controversy across all political parties. There are contention for direct primaries, which means every card-carrying member will have to vote for candidates. The indirect primaries require delegates, selected delegates, to vote for candidates. The third, which is actually generating problems across the political parties, is the consensus candidate, where everybody steps down for one candidate. And it's generating problems across the two parties. The latest is the development in the Lagos State. In Lagos State already, Governor Akinwumi Ambode has indicated his interest to go for a second time, but as at yesterday, 2 persons have also indicated interest to contest for that same position. In the People's Democratic Party, the idea of consensus has generated a reaction. Leading as presidential aspirants have all vouched to go for primaries. The National Working Committee had indicated a need for the aspirants to come together to agree on the consensus candidate. However, that is not cutting the ice.
All right. The story out of Lagos is very interesting. Yes. Considering, the position of Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, or economic capital, if you like, and some of those who have picked up the party nomination forms for the governing APC are said to be loyalists of the Jagaban. That's Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was himself a 2-term governor of the state from 1999 until 2007. And of course, he was succeeded by Fashola in 2007. And by the way, there were stories that made the rounds in 2011 that Fashola was almost being denied a second-term ticket. So is it the same thing that is playing out on this occasion?
Stubborn history repeating itself?
Yes, that, Ambode will only do 1 term, or they did make a promise, they did make a pledge, but he's picked up his nomination form. And along with that, he indicated that he's not tired, that he's ready to work.
And the other 2 that have come in now is Dr. Obafemi Hamza and Mr. Jide Sanwo-Olu. And on the People's Democratic Party, too, Femi Otedola is also being touted as a potential candidate for the People's Democratic Party.
Otedola, of course, Femi Otedola, his father, Chief Michael Otedola, was governor of Lagos from 1992 to 1993. He was, if you like, an accidental governor because it was on account of the quarrel amongst the chieftains of the then SDP that enabled him. He was of the NRC, that's National Republican Convention, to win the election. I remember while he was on the hustings on the eve of voting, he came around various media houses, and of course he was a senior citizen already. But his victory was a surprise because of the of the quarrel again in the camp of the SDP. So if the PDP presents Otedola, if he accepts to run, and then the APC is able to sort itself out or is unable to sort itself out, my history replaces, my history then repeats itself, you know, like father, like son.
Right,
so that's a significant one.
to...
Another point to note, I'm sorry, George, just before we leave this with regard to Lagos, we have seen female deputy governors serve just one term.
Yes.
Serve just one term. In the case of Bucknor, Akerele Bucknor, unfortunately, she resigned just one step ahead of impeachment.
Yes.
And then Femi Pedro took over. But every other person who, Fashola, for instance, had only had two female deputy governors, first term, another one second term. Ambode has had one female deputy governor. We don't know what's going to play out. But that makes the politics of Lagos all the more interesting. I read a story, the headline, with regard to a raid by burglars on the home of the Sharibus in Dapchi.
Yes, the father's home
State.
was
Yes,
raided,
it said that
broke into the home.
Yeah, took
Very
some
sad.
food items and a generator. Yes, it's unfortunate. That's they're compounding their agony at this time. All right, so let's return to some other stories.
Let's return to the Pilot newspaper and see some other stories trending there. A little bit below the nameplate is this one, which says, North ranks highest in malnutrition, non-compliance to polio vaccine. And that comment is attributed to UNICEF. It also says lowest in girl child school enrollment. And at the foot of the paper, gas explosion, Nasarawa to sponsor victims' treatment abroad. You heard Bayo talking about the situation in Nasarawa yesterday. Again, PDP shifts primaries convention to hold October 5th and 6th. And NAS doesn't have final say on INEC budget. That comment is attributed to Ita Enang. And beside it are two more stories. Ignore IPOB's call for sit at home, says Imo police. And federal government accuses Western nations of daylight robbery in recovery of looted funds.
All right. From the Authority newspaper, the lead story is on the economy. It says the federal government excludes debtor states from $2.9 billion Paris Club refund, with two riders to club presidential fertilizer initiative and matching grants from Universal Basic Education Commission 2. Above the nameplate of the Authority newspaper, two headlines we'll take quickly. 8 to 1 million people threatened by hunger globally. That's according to a UN report, page 4. And on page 6, cancer, greatest killer disease. That's according to Dixon, who is governor of Bayelsa. Unfortunately, he lost his mom recently, and he was diagnosed of cancer. Right at the foot of the front page of the Authority newspaper, you can see, just going through the photograph, and that's President Buhari was receiving his expression of interest and nomination forms by a group at the Villa yesterday. PDP picks presidential and governorship candidates October 3rd to the 6th. And the story on Tinubu and Ambode rift deepening is also there on page 3. Federal government recovers 769 billion naira stolen assets. Anambra, Enugu, and Imo adopt Child Rights Act. And very quickly, from the New Telegraph newspaper, above the nameplate of the New Telegraph, 64 million euro radar risks collapse over lack of spares. NAMA laments neglect of equipment, and agency installs a CAT, that's CAT, that's category 3, ILS instrument landing system at Lagos and Abuja airports. And federal government, again, the story gives states conditions to access Paris Club reform. That's on page 5 in greater detail. All right.
All right, because of time, let's go quickly to editorial before we bring in Bayo. The editorial is taking from the Punch newspapers, and it is titled, Catching Up with Global TB Targets. With mortality rates still so high and the number of fresh cases soaring rather than dipping, there seems to be no respite from the destructive impact of tuberculosis in Nigeria. At the current rate, there is very little prospect of the country ever meeting the target of 2030 set by both the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal and the World Health Organization for ending the global TB epidemic. Now, according to the World Health Organization, improved basic sanitation and living conditions have led to a decrease in the impact of TB in developed countries. For effective results, the World Health Organization recommends the directly observed treatment short course strategy combining 5 elements of political commitment with increased and sustained funding: case detection through quality assured bacteriology, standardized treatment with supervision and patient support, effective drug supply and management system, and monitoring and evaluation system and impact measurement. Nigeria stands to gain a lot by adopting the WHO strategy. Bayo.
Well, before we come to the tuberculosis issue, let's quickly look at the action of the federal government deporting 36 Indians and 2 citizens from Democratic Republic of Korea. The Indians were indicted for having fake visas and immigration papers that were not genuine. The 2 other Korean persons had overstayed the expiration of their contract job with Zamfara State government. Meanwhile, the 73rd General Assembly of the United Nations is due to open in October 25th September. President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to lead the Nigerian delegation. Apart from meeting several world leaders, one of the cards on the cards that is to be considered is the pursuit of Nigeria to one of the possible seats for Security Council meant for the African continent. Coming to the editorial now. Well, yes, the World Health Organization has set the year 2030 as deadline for eradicating tuberculosis worldwide. How is Nigeria coping? There has been an elaborate tuberculosis program in Nigeria. Not very many people know that they always advise that if you have a persistent cough that have lasted over 2 weeks, you need to go to the hospital and check. And the good news is that the checking and the testing is free. And if by chance it is tuberculosis, the earlier you go, the earlier it is detected, you stand the chance of having it cured. And not only that, treatment is free. But the editorial is drawing attention to the need for Nigeria to strive to meet this deadline. And the elements that the editorial says are required include commitment by government, increased funding, and initiative to increase case detection. Apart from that, there's also need to standardize treatment and also monitor patients so that those who have incidences of carrying the bacteria do not spread the disease. And there is also a recommendation for effective supply of drugs. If these are pursued, then 2030 initiative can be realized in Nigeria, but there is need, a lot of grounds needs to be covered. The good news is tuberculosis, when detected early, can be cured.
All right, Bayo, would like to thank you. Yeah, but just before we go, we don't have this story on the front pages of the papers that we have this morning. And it's a question to ask. What is happening to the clergy in Nigeria? They're becoming, targets for assassins, targets for kidnappers, targets for robbers. Just yesterday, another Reverend Father was killed in Imo State. And some days ago, there was a report of a clergyman who was shot at in his vehicle. But according to the report, the bullets didn't penetrate his body. We have had reports of the clergy, who have been either abducted or otherwise murdered in Benue and in other parts of the country.
I'm sure Catholic priests in Benue.
That's right. I don't have the tally, but this year has been a fairly bloody one for the men of God.
Even in the area of kidnapping, several clergymen have been kidnapped, particularly in the north-central area around Kogi. There have been more than 3 instances where clergy have come, and even judges of court have become victims of kidnapping.
That's right.
It's hard development that there is a general need to stem all this, kidnapping and killings across the nation.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll focus on the electorate and the 2019 general elections. Stay with us.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There is no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
To the outer framers, the hat tippers, the fringe goers, you don't need to hide anymore. Try Dettol Even Tone. It cleans and helps to reduce the appearance of blemishes caused by oil, dirt, and germs, giving your skin a healthy feel for an even better you. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria, junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortise Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortise Power Guard.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put.
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah. I was.
You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand. We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobo to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. If you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we are reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. That's a background up for our discussion this morning. Let's join our correspondent, Dennis Adegunloye.
A lot has in recent times been reported on increased activities on the political scene with defections, impeachments, and the like. This is no doubt to be expected in view of the Nigerian political landscape, and with the 2019 general elections just a few months away, Nigerians will surely not expect anything other than even more political wranglings, especially with party primaries and campaigns on the horizon. The question is, with all the political intrigues gathering pace, what is the position of the ordinary Nigerian who, at the end of it all, will decide who takes the nation to the next level? Are the masses prepared for what some are expecting to be unprecedented elections in the history of the country?
Nigerians are very prepared. They are very expectant.
Nigerians are ready to vote credible human beings. That is why, if you look at the APC, Mr. President have allowed it for direct primaries.
Well, I think Nigerians are very well prepared. They are very, very well prepared. We are all looking forward to the 2019 general election.
What are the challenges faced in the electoral process?
Nigeria as a country is prepared, but the Nigerians, I don't know if everybody has got his or her PCV ready, because that is the first step. And if they have gotten it ready, are they ready not to set their votes for just a plate of rice or a cup of spoon or just a cup of tea in the gathering of people, not to set our future? Are we prepared? That is just what I'm just trying. I don't know.
This issue of vote buying irritates me a lot. Politicians are encouraging this. It's not good for our democracy.
This should not be forced. People should not be enticed with money. They should take that one away from it. And they should let people fold their mind. They should vote for the people of their choice.
What needs to be done is, and there's a need to vote enlightenment. They tell their workers, assist people to get this, their PVCs. It's their power.
But me, by the grace of God, I want to appeal to all senators to approve the budget for INEC within the shortest possible time. Mr. President is on course. And in this country, we have never had a president that is a caring father for the masses like Mr. President.
The young ones should get involved in the process. The process is being cleaned up. The present administration is doing a whole lot to restore confidence, especially confidence of the young ones in our electoral process, in our electoral system.
I just hope for the best.
The views of these few people, which perhaps reflects the opinions of the majority of Nigerians, will be the focus for guests on Good Morning Nigeria, who will seek to proffer concrete solutions to these concerns.
Thank you, Dennis Adegunloye, for that background report. Now, joining us in the studio to discuss this topic in Abuja, we have Mr. David Akuji. He is a Deputy Director and Technical Assistant to the Director General of the National Orientation Agency. I want to thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Also in our Abuja studio, we have Alhaji Mohammed Naladu. He's the Chairman IPAC. It's nice to have you join us here again this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
And in our Benin Network studio, we have one of our regulars on the program, Dr. Okonzwa Osawaru. He's a public affairs analyst. We want to thank you very much for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Glad to be here.
All right, gentlemen, once again, welcome to the conversation. Let's begin with the chairman of the Interparty Advisory Council, that's Alhaji Mohammed Nalado. Some persons would wonder, considering the rather frenetic pace of political activities, not unexpected at this time, but you've seen an array of movements, defections by politicians, and right now they're on the eve of their primaries. Does the voter who ultimately is to be wooed to vote for a candidate of his or her choice, or a party of his or her choice, or a program or a promise, does the voter have a sense of what's going on and therefore being able to decipher and just make meaning out of what has been playing out?
Thank you very much. You see, what is happening in the politics today in this country, I think is realignment. People are taking proper position. You know, when APC came, people with different ideologies came together and decided to work together. So when they started working, they realized, some of them realized that they don't belong to the same group, they can work together. So people are now taking, you know, proper positions to where they deserve. So this is what is causing this movement from one party to another. And at the end of the day, when everything settles, then voters will make their choice, of course.
But in all of that movement from one party to the other, you know, like I know in developed economies, the voter is king. Are these political parties even thinking about the voter and what's going on in the mind of the voter?
Well, we politicians were trying our best. We gave support, maximum support to INEC, you know, in the pursuit for proper voters, registration. I remember INEC contacted political parties recently and sought for our opinion whether to extend their, time of registration of voters. And we all supported INEC, and INEC have done so. So voters are being given due consideration by political parties. These politicians that are making these movements, most of them are not the party administrators. They are contestants. So they are looking for positions. And, well, I think the INEC have to do something, actually, because we want a peaceful polity. This movement will not like anything that will cause, disaffection, serious crisis at the end of the day.
All right, let's go to Mr. David Akuji. The National Orientation Agency, I want to believe that in this period, this is when that agency should be extremely active. Are you aware of what's going on in the mind of the voter at this time, especially if you consider what we are seeing on the political scene at the moment?
At the National Orientation Agency, what we're doing is to raise the consciousness and awareness levels of the electorate through various programs. At the moment, there are 5 ways in which we are engaging with the electorate. The first is in the area of voter education. We realize that because there's been an increase in the number of political parties that have been registered, there's likely to be some bit of confusion when it comes to the time to vote, especially at the rural levels. And so we're engaging with the electorate at the rural level, educating them on the need to be very conscious of how they perform their civic duties in terms of voting. At another level, that's the second level in which we're engaging with them, is in the area of voter mobilization. Alhaji Nalado referred to that in terms of what they did with IPAC to encourage people to come out to register. And we're saying to the electorates across the country, through our 774 offices in the local governments in Nigeria, that the power actually lies with them. And they should exercise this power conscious of the fact that the people that will be voted into office will determine their fate and the fate of their children in the areas of education, healthcare, and infrastructure that are necessary to provide good governance. So we're working in this direction in the rural areas where the majority of the electorate are. We're also working in terms of community peace building We know that election periods are very sensitive. There's all kinds of predictions of possibility of violence, you know, given the tense political atmosphere that all of us are witnessing. And so we're working in the area of building resilience, community resilience, to address those issues at community levels that can lead to peace. We're also working in terms of establishing rural community peace-building committees comprising youth groups, religious leaders, traditional rulers, and all of that. Then we're also doing campaigns against vote buying, which is a huge challenge, and which is also making people to throw their conscience away and vote for the money. We're working on this in various communities across the country. At the national level, the Director General of the National Orientation Agency has commissioned a National Stakeholders Committee comprising the police, INEC, the Office of the National Security Advisor, the Office of the Chief of Defense Staff, the Office of Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Air Staff, Chief of Naval Staff, and all of the stakeholders that have roles to play come the 2019 general elections. The purpose is to create synergy among stakeholders in government who have various roles to play, and to ensure that we have such unity of actions that will guarantee a peaceful and informed outcome in the 2019 general elections. These are some of the ways in which we're engaging with the electorate and raising consciousness to ensure that they are aware that indeed the power lies with them and that they are informed to exercise that power with conscience.
All right, Mr. Akoji, thank you very much. We'll return to you to get further insight into what the NOA is doing. But let's go over to our Benin Network studios where we earlier introduced Dr. Okunzuwa Osawara, who is a regular on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. Osawara, I'd like to pose my earlier question to the IPAC chairman, to you again. Can we have a sense, for instance, of what the electorate would make of the ongoings in the polity? I mean, some would say the shenanigans, the defections, and the sheer din of what to do, what not to do, who is picking up a form, who is not picking, what method to use, you know, whether direct, indirect, or consensus. How does the voter make sense of all of this?
Well, what is going on so far shouldn't be the concern of a neutral voter, because these are intra-party activities, yes. The voter, as a concerned citizen, could be watching the trend, and of course, interest will vary from one person to the other. By the time the political parties have thrown up their respective candidates, that is when the voter is supposed to now say who is better, who better fits my aspirations, my circumstances, and the rest of it. And of course, the din or the hubbub of political activities are somewhat inherently associated with democracy. That is actually part of the liveliness of the whole enterprise. Unlike the quietness of dictatorship, where every person is hushed. So, in the midst of this din, this hubbub, and so on, the debates, the discussions at different fora, the beer parlors, proper parliaments, just a wide range of where people gather, churches, mosques, and so on and so forth, the discussion should be on, because that's the only way you are going to throw up what the issues are. That's the only way people can persuade one another horizontally, even as they are receiving messages from above, and so on and so forth. So I don't think it's a thing to be lamented at all. If anything, it's a way to gauge the level of interest amongst Nigerians. For as long as this interest is expressed on the day voting is going to take place, that is going to be the ultimate test. After this discussion, the apparent noise, the din, as we have said, the hubbub, what is going to happen on that day when the choices are clearly differentiated? The political parties are there already. Let us see who their candidates will be. But for the time being, the Nigerian voters as citizens will be watching. Even the internal processes of the political parties, will they take these things into consideration? Will they reward the party that has observed internal democracy? Would they punish a party that has disregarded democratic norms in selecting its candidate? These are all issues. Of course, people believe democracy is a bit messy, but as a form of government, the respect for the voter, the respect for the citizen is supposed to be at the cornerstone for as long as the mandate of whoever is going to govern is based on the will and the mood of the electorate eventually. I don't think there's any problem with moving from one party to the other because people are seeking their advantages. How these advantages they seek will be endorsed by the voters will be known on election day as well. So the Brownian movement we are having in the system, for me, is a sign of life, and it should be encouraged as long as there's no violence and unfair play.
Still staying with you in Benin, Dr. Sawari, now, given this movement from one party to the other, do you think that the political parties are even thinking about the electorate, knowing that the electorate is central to the process?
Yes, any well-constituted political party should know that apart from its other assets, pressing these assets into service will depend on what the voters will say. Of course, when they are bound together, they become the electorate. So everything will be in vain if you don't receive the endorsement of the voter at the end of the day. So it will be in the interest of the political parties to pay attention to the mood of the political parties, of the voters, I beg your pardon, and to seek ways of knowing what the aspirations and the preferences of voters are. Of course, this issue you have just raised has to do with the evolution of our own party system. Our political parties themselves are still struggling to become corporate entities that can fight for power efficiently. So maybe as we evolve, as we go along, political parties will realize that even elections are not supposed to be seasonal. There are so many activities that are supposed to be carrying out before elections. Just like we have the gentleman in the studio, the representative of the DG of NOA. The work the NOA is doing is actually the work of political parties. We know in our own history, for instance, NOA has been in existence. In the aborted Third Republic, there was a political party, the one that tilted towards the right, that complained that NOA was actually fostering the position of the other party. So it's the political parties who should actually engage in voter education. We haven't forgotten this. He's looking at me. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So the NOA, except is able to hone its message in a very neutral way, is also subject to partisanship in interpretation. So it's actually the work of political parties to go to rural areas, to talk about his manifesto, to persuade people why he should adopt his own plank of activities and programs, and not a government agency per se, because it is fraught to misinterpretation. Of course, in the absence of political parties going out to the field to persuade voters to adopt their own manifestos and so on, maybe the NOA can be a stopgap for the time being. But it's the work of political parties to spread out, to educate people what choices are available to them, why Party A is going to be better than Party B. It is the work of political parties. So as our democracy continues to mature, we have to invest in the viability of our political parties as well as the corporate carriers of the messages or the options electorates are going to be making their preferences from.
Just before we introduce our next guest who's joining us, just with you, Dr. Okonzuwa, on the one hand, you said that it's almost immaterial that the voter is not being brought into the picture. But when you disaggregate the political process, you would be asking the question that some persons already have asked: what are the issues? We have barely 5 months, as it were, to the general elections. What are the issues? What is the voter being confronted with? Yes, we've seen the defections and so on and so forth. Besides defection, what are the issues? What is it that the voter will vote for? And to the extent that political parties are the beneficiaries of the votes cast at an election, what is the message, or what are the messages, or what is the messaging from the political parties themselves? That's why earlier I referred to what has been described as the dean in the political space, rather than proper messaging or canalization of messaging that will also get the voters excited and say, all right, so let the parties deal with their internal shenanigans, and then we'll get ourselves fully ready. You are educating voters, say, vote right. What are you voting on?
Well, political parties are competitors. In fact, they are very competition that will give the voters the options where they are going to exercise their preferences. Of course, there are other players, like the media, like security agencies, on and on and on. But it is political parties that are seeking a mandate to govern. It is the political parties that are seeking the consent of the voters as citizens to obtain their mandate to rule, to obtain a kind of legitimacy to oversee their affairs for a period. Now, this din and the hubbub, the noise in the political feed, you cannot dissociate it from the process itself, because every person is supposed to raise his own voice, trying to catch the attention of the voters. Now, this will come back to the basic issue, while people come out to vote or not to vote, ranging from who is an inactive citizen, who is generally indifferent to what is going on in the political feed, through the specialized voter, to the community mobilizer, to the campaigner, to the complete activist who vote in all elections, who is aware of all these issues. These are all very complex issues, based on the level of socioeconomic development in the country, the level of education of the voters, the voters' belief in the value of the vote, and so on, compared to other activities. These are all different issues. But the pool of voters is available to all the political parties. It is political parties, essentially, because they are competing for the mandate, I repeat, who are supposed to go out in the field to canvass their positions, whether in form of campaigns, visits to communities, and so on and so forth. Because it's political parties that will eventually govern, especially in our own system when you don't have arrangement for independent candidacy. So it's the work of political parties. So all of us as citizens, all of us as patrons who mean well by the country, we have to pay attention to our political parties. Now, if a person moves from party A to party B, that is ultimately immaterial to the voter. If he moves from party A to party B, is it because the platform of party B is more attractive? If he has done so, will the voters endorse him on election day to say, yes, this particular individual has moved from party A to party B? On account of his movement, we also believe that party B is going to serve our interests better. So all these have effects on who you keep in your political party, who do you expect to go, who do you actively recruit, and so on and so forth. As our democracy continuously matures and believe, all these things will continuously themselves improve. It's a milestone we are yet, and in my own general assessment, I don't think we are doing too badly about it. After all, we are just about 20 years old in this experiment.
All right, Dr. Okunzuwa Osawaru, thank you very much from our Benin Network studios. We'll get back to you later on in the course of the conversation. Let's introduce another guest now who is joining us. Is Mr. Oluwole Osaze-Oze. He's Director of Voter Education and Publicity of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Of course, it's a public face and also a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria. Mr. Osaze-Oze, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you for having me again. Good morning.
All right. Well, our focus, of course, is on the Nigerian voter and the 2019 general elections. Some persons would argue that we haven't seen in recent times the kind of mobilization of eligible registrants to get their names on the voters register and be in a position, therefore, to vote in the 2019 elections. The other day, the chairman of INEC indicated that there were some 84 or 86 million registered voters, but there is also the specter of uncollected PVCs. What is the position as at today?
Thank you very much. Well, I didn't quite get the foundation you laid when before asking your question. Talking about mobilization, I wasn't so sure whether you said there had been a groundswell of mobilization or there hadn't been. There had been a dearth of mobilization.
There has been unprecedented.
A groundswell.
Yes.
Yes. The truth is that for the first time, INEC commenced the continuous voter registration as envisaged in the Electoral Act. Since 2006, the Electoral Act has made provision for registration of voters on a continuous basis. But due to transitional issues, that could not be made possible until 2017. So in April 2017, the Commission commenced this exercise. It started at a rather slower pace, but typical towards the end of the exercise, because it had to be suspended at a given time so as to do all things that are necessary to clean up the register and also to get it certified and handed over to political parties and other stakeholders. Towards the end of that exercise, there was a groundswell, but in a sense, I think I agree with you. It's almost unprecedented that people say, I think it shows the kind of interest people now have in partaking in the process, and the realization, I believe, that votes actually do count and will make a difference. Your vote can make a difference. And fortunately, there's a convergence of interest in terms of mobilization. I think political parties did, religious leaders and faith-based organizations were very involved, CSOs were involved, of course the commission was also involved. And that awareness, I think, led to that, using your term, unprecedented involvement of citizens in the process. I think partly it's partly due to the successes and the realization that, yes, our votes matter, our votes will count. So, yes.
Yeah, and the question has to do with the number of registered voters.
Yes.
How many are registered? Registration is probably one, and actual collection of PVCs is another, because there have also been stories of stacks of PVCs uncollected at various locations.
Yes, those stories are correct. We have, by last I saw the figures, over 7.4 million uncollected PVCs. These date back to 2010. Some of those who registered since 2010, who registered but did not bother to go and collect their PVCs. Their PVCs are lying down in our offices, ready for collection. It also includes those as recent as December 2017 who had registered. In terms of the register of voters, the figures we have given out are the captured data, especially those of CVR, are captured data. Now we probably have to run AFIS. We'll have to run AFIS, and business. It has to go through our business process rules, and so that figure is almost certainly going to come down, but it might be marginally, because some people registered more than once. Some people, instead of doing the transfer, for example, went through the whole hub of registering again. It's not for those, so we have to clean those registers up. So anybody who also ought not to be in the register, we will remove. So that's field data capture. We will have to sift those things and get. And I also hope and appeal to Nigerians, after going through the whole gamut, after going through the hassle of registration, they ought to collect their permanent voters cards. There are millions and millions and millions lying in our offices uncollected, more than 7.4 million.
All right, thank you very much, Osaze. We'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. And that leads me to Mr. David Akuji. Osaze raised a very key and important issue that I would like you to speak to, which is about these uncollected PVCs. I want to believe that the NOA has a role to play in this direction. What are you doing in terms of educating the electorate on the importance of having them go to collect these PVCs?
That is a critical component of the work we're doing in terms of voter mobilization. The electorate has no power if he does not have the PVC. What empowers the electorate is the possession of the PVC and then the ability to vote on the day of election. So this is a critical component of the work that we're doing in terms of voter mobilization and voter education. And we're collaborating with INEC. We're hoping that INEC will upscale its support for the National Orientation Agency in this regard. Reason being, unfortunately, in the preparation for elections, NOA, because what we do is conscientization, soft power, NOA is hardly ever considered in terms of the preparations and budgetary provisions for this work. But a lot is expected of us by the public and critical stakeholders across board. So we have enjoyed support, and I think we'll continue to enjoy support from INEC to enable us to do what is required of us to do. But certainly we're working in this regard in terms of our voter mobilization.
But again, sorry, just a little...
was smiling a while ago when...
just a quick follow-up on that same question, because in terms of field work and conscientization, what exactly, your officers who went to the field, what did they find out? Why are people not picking up their PVCs?
A lot of people are still disillusioned. A lot of people still do not believe that their votes would actually count. You understand? So we're working with them and pointing back to 2015, where the votes indeed clearly counted, and to assure them that government is working to ensure that the votes would actually count. But there's apathy. A lot of people still don't have belief in the system, and we're working on this.
Did you try to find out why a registrant would take the trouble of going to a registration center to be on the voter's roll and yet be apathetic in picking up his or her PVC?
The process, there are challenges in the process, you know, and a lot of these challenges have been discussed in the public space. I'm sure INEC and Osaze are aware of some of the challenges that people have encountered in terms of collecting the PVC after going through the challenge of the registration process. So a lot of the people that we speak to speak about these challenges, and quite a number of them are not prepared, you know, for those challenges.
All right, Alhaji Mohammed Nalado, political parties are the ultimate beneficiaries of votes cast at an election. And to cast a vote, of course, you must be on the voters register. You must have your PVC. So Osaze Uzeh tells us now that there are some 7.4 million uncollected PVCs, and discounting for persons who may have passed away in recent times. Let's say at least you have over 7 million uncollected PVCs. Those are 7 million potential voters. What are the parties doing to ensure that these PVCs are collected?
The political parties have been engaging themselves in voter education. And, you know, when there are no voters, that means there are no political parties. It is very, very, much concern to us that voters are not coming to pick their PVCs. Because if they don't pick, that means there's going to be low turnout of voters on election day. And we feel it is very important, and we have been contacting supporting agencies to help political parties to build their capacity, you know, to educate us on how to ourselves go out and educate, you know, voters on this issue. Actually, most of us are handicapped because political parties do not have enough resources to engage themselves in voter education. But we do receive a lot of support from INEC and other agencies in building the capacity of political party leaders. I think INEC is doing very well. We have supported INEC, and we have commended them seriously in that regard. And we are always calling on voters to come out and pick their PVCs where they have registered.
Now, in terms of advocacy, you know, INEC and NOA, yes, they're playing their part, but I think the political parties need to do more. Now, based on my own research with a non-governmental organization that is into advocacy at the grassroots, we found out that some of these political parties who say they go to educate the electorate, what they're actually doing is just giving little things to people at the grassroots in particular. For instance, there's a village where they went to and they were giving them packets of Maggi, telling them to vote. Just one packet of Maggi to each household. How is that voter education?
I don't think political party leaders do engage themselves in such practices you are talking about. Maybe people that are canvassing for votes, like candidates, you know. And INEC has done so much to block, you know, the loopholes that make them to rig elections. That is why maybe they have, you know, taken a new dimension to be meeting voters at home to buy their votes or conscience. But the thing that we political parties are doing on voter education does not mean or does not even make political parties to go house to house. No, what we do, we go to Market Square, we go to schools, we go to where they're having gathering to educate voters on the importance of these PVCs. But I don't think if there is any incidence where a political party, leader is caught in such practices.
But are they aware of what some of their agents are doing at the grassroots?
Well, of course, there are things that you will know, and there are things that you cannot actually be in position to know. But I know in most cases, I have never seen a case where it is brought to IPAC you know, that, I mean, a political party operator is caught in this kind of practice. I don't think it is possible.
All right, thank you very much. We have some tweets that have come in from our viewers, but just before we take those tweets, let's bring in again Mr. Osaze-Ozie. Mr. Osaze-Ozie, next week, almost invariably, the political parties will get ahead with their primaries. And you were hearing all kinds of things as to whether it's direct, indirect, consensus. First, how prepared is INEC to monitor the primaries of the political parties? I mean, they are in different offices and, of course, spread across all parts of the country.
Thank you. Well, that is a monitoring of the activities of political parties is a constitutional responsibility foisted on the Commission by the 1999 Constitution as amended. So it's the duty, a constitutional duty as well as a statutory duty to monitor the activities of political parties, and the conduct of primaries to select candidates for elections is one of the cardinal subjects that are monitored by the Commission. In this regard, we have, of course, you are aware that the budget for the elections has not been passed, and the budgetary allocation for elections covers some activities regarding the monitoring of political parties. But we'll have to make do with what we have and seek alternate means to ensure that that is done. There are 91 political parties. They are all entitled to produce candidates for elections, so it's a big challenge. By the way, primaries have been underway, actually. Technically, it started on the 18th of August, so we've been on for more than 2 weeks now. And some political parties have already commenced that process. For whatever reasons, the media tends to cover what's termed the larger parties, but in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the Commission, all parties are equal. There are no small or large parties. But yes, quite honestly, there are some parties that will only field a couple of candidates, a few candidates, and there are others who will field for every position. So they are required by law to give us notices, and I think just about all of them have given us those notices of their primaries, and we will, as best as we can. But for the first time, we may not be able to use only our staff, so we might have to engage members of the National Youth Service Corps or other agencies and other people for assistance in terms of monitoring. But yes, we're on top of the situation, and we have commenced the monitoring of those primaries. And by the way, you talked about direct and indirect and saying so much. There are only two types of modes for selection of candidates known to the law. The Electoral Act is quite clear about it. It's either direct or it's indirect. There's nothing like consensus. Any other mode that is adopted has to fit into these two modes. So eventually, if you choose whatever method, you must come to either direct or indirect, and that is what we monitor. If you do not adopt either of these two, then it will be in our reports, and any person who was a candidate can challenge you in court or can challenge the action of the political party in that regard.
Incidentally, I'm very happy because that was going to be my next question. You know, a frequent source of litigation, election litigation, has often had to do with the emergence of candidates. Sometimes, you know, INEC has been said to have monitored maybe one Congress, one set of primaries, and then a parallel one was conducted. It wasn't done. And here you are, I mean, again, from the dean, because Dr. Kunzwa Osawa responded to that when we're talking about the dean that we are hearing in the polity at the moment. Some are saying we will go for direct primaries. Others are saying we will go for indirect. Others are also saying consensus. Indeed, in some cases, we have seen political chieftains anointing candidates and saying, this is your governor, 2019. This is the deputy governor, not even running mate or not candidate. They are already saying that. So, how is INEC approaching all of this? I'm sure that, of course, when you get to the field, you will take your reports. But what ordinarily will be the disposition of INEC? Expatiate on what you said about direct and indirect primaries.
Okay. I think these cases for anointing, these people are playing God, and man cannot play God. It's ridiculous, actually, because regardless of what you think, I think some of it is grandstanding, it's just politics, maybe to scare away the opposition. I really don't know their motives, but they're not true Democrats. Whether you anoint somebody or you don't, you still have to go through the hog of doing primaries, because the Constitution says, first of all, for any party to be registered, you must have a Constitution. And part of that Constitution, you must select your candidates in a democratic manner. The Electoral Act has gone on to expatiate on that and says, look, there are two ways of selecting candidates, either direct primaries or indirect. Direct primaries, basically means that every registered member of the political party can vote directly for the candidate of his or her choice for any position or office. So if for the presidential election, for example, the whole country is one constituency, so every registered member of Party X is entitled to go and vote directly. You don't have to vote for a delegate who will now go and vote for a candidate. So that's basically explains what indirect primaries are. Indirect primaries concerns the fact that members of the party vote for delegates who in turn vote for maybe other delegates or vote for candidates. They don't vote directly. It's not a direct universal franchise. It's you vote through your representatives. You choose representatives who go there and represent your interests and vote for particular candidates. Either way, even if you have done consensus, and even if in most party constitutions, even if there's only one candidate for a position, you have to have a congress or a convention where those entitled to vote come there and say, we accept this candidate or we don't accept this aspirant, rather. Because before you become a candidate, you have to be an aspirant. It's when you're adopted by your party that you now become a candidate. We vote for this person, we vote for that person. So issue of being governor, I anoint you, you will be the next governor is presumptuous and playing God. It's not acceptable under a democratic system.
I wonder, in terms of engagement with the political parties, I mean, there's very little perhaps that the electoral umpire can do if politicians are grandstanding. But might it not, be more cost-effective if perhaps parties reached an understanding with the electoral umpire in terms of the broad parameters? It's not the business of INEC to conduct the primaries for them, but just to also save litigation costs. INEC often will be a party, and you have to, of course, make representation, and that will cost you money. So why don't you start saving costs now by letting political parties, discussing with political parties and reaching broad agreements on the broad general parameters for primaries, and then, getting ahead into the principal contest itself? That's
quite a valid question. Thank you. Well, the truth of the matter is that we have been doing this. Just last week, Friday, we engaged the political parties. We had a meeting between the Commission and the political parties. All registered political parties were invited, and I believe over 53 were present. Last I looked at the register of those who attended that meeting last week, Friday. And this was the subject of discussion. Political party primaries, the do's and the don'ts. What is acceptable in law? So the legal department, for example, put them through. Many of the chairmen were there. Some were represented by our legal advisors, by the secretaries, different. But the vast majority of political parties were represented. And we went through the full hog of the Electoral Act and the Constitution and what is required of political parties. So some people who make noise, if I may use that term, or who do talk about this, are not necessarily party officials. Sometimes they are, mostly they are not. Mostly they are what you call, loosely called chieftains of the party, So basically, they were put through. That is one in a series of engagements. For example, I'm aware in Osun, for example, and this will be extended to all the political parties for the general election, we have a department in charge of alternate dispute resolution. You're quite right. The vast majority of cases actually don't necessarily come from petitions, post-election disputes. They come from pre-election disputes relative to selection of candidates, alleges of breaches of the law, of the Electoral Act, of the Constitution of the land, that's Nigerian Constitution, or Constitution of the party, or the guidelines of the party. So it is important that people know. Education, enlightenment in terms of that regard is very, very important to us, and we have been and will continue to engage the political parties and offer our services as mediators and offer them that there is an alternative to litigation. But it's better they know so that they don't fall into those traps before they start. And then, of course, you're very well aware, ignorance is certainly not a reason, not an excuse. It's nothing that is brooked by the law. So let them know. Let them come from a position of knowledge. So if they fall foul of the law, they know they are doing it deliberately or mischievously.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Oluwole Osaze-Ozie. As we indicated, we have some tweets already. Joy, let's take those tweets right away. And then,
all right, let's start with the first one. It's from Victor Ohioshuma. He says, Nigerians are ever ready for the elections, but there are fears over the decline of assent of the Amendment Electoral Act by the President and the delay in passing the INEC supplementary budget. The National Assembly should reconvene to address these two issues. The incidents of vote buying should be checked.
And from, excuse me, Amobola, we have this tweet. Has INEC done enough to sensitize Nigerians on its preparedness? How about those in the hinterland? How much sensitization has been rolled out to those persons? The NOA representative has spoken to that particular point raised there in the editorial, in the in the tweet.
All right, let's take the next one from Dele Jack Solomon. He tweets, one of the biggest issues that will determine the 2019 general elections is insecurity, which is affecting some communities across the country. Ongoing instability with issues of corruption and state of the economy could affect the vote itself and will certainly be a big issue on the campaign trail.
We have this from Sani Umar. It says Nigerians are gradually understanding that voting is the most important weapon to remove those leaders that are not ready to be good leaders that the people voted them to be. And the worst challenge is in those who do not realize this.
And the next one is coming from Ogbeni Saz Omobola. If there is any fear in the minds of the average Nigerian, it's the issue of vote buying, which has now taken center stage. It's been there, no doubt, but ballot snatching and result falsification didn't make it pronounced. So INEC needs to do more by criminalizing inducements.
Inducement is already criminalized. All right, Dele Jack Solomon has this tweet. Now, let's remind our leaders and aspirants that as we prepare for the next elections, adequate attention must be given to certain issues that continue to affect the political, economic, and social fortunes of Nigeria, most paramount of which should be the issue of national unity.
Olowokere Olajide tweets, there is poverty in the country. We can only get it right politically if the political class decides to sacrifice their selfish interests.
Mike Ayakwa has this tweet. After the successful general elections in 2015, INEC told the world that the process of the 2019 elections will start very early. It's very ridiculous, according to him, that the same INEC just brought the budget very late. Moving forward, all hands must be on deck.
And we have this one from Usman Bani Kantu. He tweets, the key factor encouraging vote selling and other atrocities perpetrated during elections is due to apathy, lack of internal democracy and frustrations within the political parties, and in most cases, delegates are handpicked by governors rather than emerging through the right process. You talked about that a while ago, Kingsley.
That's right. Of course, so we are taking a short break now. After the break, we'll continue with the conversation with our guests.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, and we're right here at the Abuja headquarters studios of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's go over to our Benin Network Center, where we still have Dr. Osawaro. Dr. Osawaro, a number of issues have been raised by both the INEC official and the NOAA official with regard to uncollected PVCs, what the political parties need to do, the primaries, and the lot of noise that, again, we are hearing with regard to anointment of candidates, if you like, or rather of aspirants. You know, some persons are already handpicking their successors, and party members, of course, will be wondering, say, look, is this the way we're going to see the primaries go? Or is this the way we're going to see the 2019 elections go? What are your thoughts?
Again, we have to recall that elections are competitive. For as long as the competition takes place within a set of rules, and everybody agrees those rules have been obeyed, complied with, there will be winners and there will be losers. But before the outcome is determined, you have a lot of struggle. What sort of resources are being mobilized into the arena? Are those resources legitimate or illegitimate? Are the methods acceptable in the eyes of the law or not? Now, within the political parties, Mr. Sazel Uzi has already told us that only 2 methods are sanctioned for selecting candidates, the direct and indirect primaries. Now, if INEC is aware that a party is already breached the process of selection, will it still go ahead to accept that candidate, for instance, as validly nominated? Does INEC have the powers to accept or reject that candidate? That may be a question for INEC if it has the powers or not. Now, for the voters themselves who are watching, as said earlier, would they reward a political party that is already showing a sign of hooliganism at the process, at the level of selecting a candidate? Because if a wrong person has been selected through a wrong method, what do we expect that person to do when he enjoys authority? When powers of the state are going to be entrusted to the person? Again, people should be watching. Now, most of those other issues about PVCs, uncollected and all that, for me, I don't really think they are very, very determinant. While INEC should seek all imaginative methods, not incompatible with the law, to make sure any person who is registered has his PVC, everybody doesn't have to come to vote. Even in mature democracies, on election day, the turnout is usually somewhere between a fifth and a third. So, what is always important in a democracy or in any polyarchy where the consent of the people is important is, at the end of voting, is the decision compatible with the will of the people? That is the ultimate question. Whatever processes are going to funnel into those ones, of course, we have to safeguard the integrity of the processes. We have to make sure there's adequate quality control. But all of us cannot come out to vote for one reason or the other. Of course, the volume of voters will help boost the level of legitimacy, the confidence in the system, and so on and so forth. What is required at an election is that a decision has been taken, a person has been voted, a mandate has been conferred, and then you wait for the next electoral cycle to reassess that person. So most of these issues are generally adventitious, as it were. Now, the political parties themselves, if they know that they're not going to be rewarded for a wrong process, they're not going to be rewarded for choosing a wrong candidate, of course, they will have to adjust. If Party A chooses a candidate through a process that is not sanctioned by law, and voters say, oh, that's a dangerous thing, on account of that, we are switching to Party B, I don't think the Party A will repeat that same thing at the next electoral cycle. So most of these issues are issues of the law, issues of preferences of the voters, and so on and so forth, even the electoral umpire. So a lot of issues combine to improve our political culture. So we just carry on, hoping that we don't veer off the legitimate boundaries, and we make sure that our mandate, that is the critical step, our mandate is legitimately conferred, and we expect that mandate to be subject to checks and balances that exist in our institutions, and at the end, or the expiration of that mandate, we also decide whether to withhold, whether to renew, or to reinforce that mandate. So that is actually what the elections are about. A decision before all those who are qualified to vote. So it doesn't have to be everybody who comes out. Our concerns should not be heaped on that. On that processes, they're talking about political parties themselves. Now, even the people who are going to govern, how do the political parties ensure that their candidates are well prepared? Those are issues. Those are issues for political parties. Of course, I was talking about the NOA a while ago. Yes, it's a stopgap measure. They can continue to educate the voters. but it's ultimately the work of political parties. Because how am I going to believe that when the NOA is going to a particular village, they're not going to be leaning towards one party or the other? As I said earlier, it's happened in our history before. The CEO of the organization even eventually ended up being a presidential candidate. So political parties, of course, I'm not saying NOA should be scrapped, but it should be a stopgap measure. It is the political parties that should go canvass for votes, that should go educate the voters, and tell them what their manifestos contain. That is the work of political parties. The NOA can remain, but they have to make sure they are neutral. They have to make sure their messages cannot be misconstrued as supporting Party A or Party B at any particular point in time. That is also an investment in the integrity of our processes. That's also a way of ensuring that our political processes are generally immune from undue influences as well. That's a way of making sure resources are not unduly tilted one way or the other. So political parties have to be reinforced as an investment in the sustenance of our democracy.
One last question before we let you go, Dr. Osawaru. You know, a couple of our viewers online talked about the issue of vote buying. That has become a very serious issue in the process. How can we address this?
Well, again, ultimately, it's going to be a function of voter education and voter conviction. But don't forget, there are many methods of influence. Where a person believes persuasion is not enough, he may have to resort to inducement, even if it's forbidden by the law. Now, again, Party A may decide to also believe in inducement when it fears that Party B is going to resort to that. So it's going to be general improvement in our system, general improvement in education. That means veering out the political arena now to our general education, our primary schools, secondary schools. In fact, the building, development, and calibration of the citizen himself, over and above the political party. When a person is convinced that my vote is my power, at this time I'm being invited to come and choose who is going to govern the affairs of the country. A person who is so convinced will not sell his vote. But that conviction has to be widespread to be effective. If, as I'm queuing in a particular, to vote at a particular election, somebody is receiving 5,000 naira, why wouldn't I? So the conviction has to be widespread. We have to be patient. As we improve gradually, inducement will eventually fade out of the background. And let's not forget, as we cross one milestone after the other, we also have to know that inducement, as condemnable as it is also better and superior to violence. Because physical force, application of physical force, is also a resource in the political arena. We should not deny that. All the militias people are assembling and so on to snatch ballot boxes and so on, if those ones will recede, and we are now at the stage of inducement, we can also hope down the road that citizens, on account of the education they have received, on account of their exposure, will now begin to pass up whatever inducement and vote their conscience. I think it's going to be a matter of evolution. It's the only thing that's going to be wiped out overnight.
All right, Dr. Okunzuwa Osawaru from our Benin Network Center, thank you very much for your contributions. Let's bring in again David Akoji, who is Deputy Director at the National Orientation Agency. There are a number of points that have been raised. Very quickly respond to these issues. But in particular also, you said repeatedly that the NOA is engaged in sensitization activities in 774 local government areas on a wide variety of topics and issues. What feedback have you received from the electorate?
Well, in terms of our campaign in the area of vote buying, we are seeing a lot of positive response. There are issues of poverty. There are issues of ignorance. And our campaigns at that level are addressing these two issues. We're telling the people that if you collect a sachet of Maggi or 2,000 naira and you sell that vote, you should be conscious of the fact that you have sold your right to ask questions if you don't get service. And the reason why you vote actually should be in anticipation of specific service that you want from the people that you vote into office. So we're propagating this message. It's making a gradual impact. But very importantly, I want to respond to some of the issues that Dr. Okonzwa raised. I find it a little curious that he's worried about partisanship, taking sides, and yet is advocating that political parties are best suited for neutral voter education. That position seems a little contradictory to me. Yes, political parties ought to engage in voter education. But if you look at our national political landscape, you will find that some parties are actually far, far bigger than others. These parties, like the chairman of IPAC has just said, are not equal in terms of their financial capacity and their capacity to engage in this voter education. So you will not get neutrality in terms of voter education from political parties. They will propagate their policies, programs, and activities that they propose for the electorate to benefit from. That is the kind of education that you would largely see coming from political parties. National Orientation Agency has in its Enabling Act, which established the NOA, the responsibility for creating vibrant democratic culture, the responsibility for voter education, the responsibility for sensitization and awareness creation. Now, I would blame Osaze's position and the accusation that NOA have been seen in some instances taking sides on even the very nature of our mandate. Our mandate is to publicize and sensitize citizens, create awareness on government policies, programs, and activities. And you know that government policies, programs, and activities part time are the policies, programs, and activities of a political party in power, which is implementing those programs, policies, and activities. But that's what the law says we should do. Sensitize and create awareness concerning those programs, policies, and activities that are being executed by the government in position at a particular point in time, and show citizens how they can draw benefits from that. Now, that can create avenue for the assumption, of partisanship.
All right, we want to thank you very much, Mr. David Akoji, Deputy Director and Technical Assistant to the Director General of the National Orientation Agency. Thank you very much for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you.
We also want to thank Mr. Osaze Uze, the Director of Voter Education and Publicity of the INEC. Thank you very much for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd also like to thank Alhaji Mohammed Nalado, Chairman IPAC. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning again, and thank you very much for your contributions.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's it. We'll move on to sports segments. But before then, let's also thank Dr. Okonzwa Osawaro, a public analyst who joined us from Benin. I'm so sorry. Thank you very much for joining us. We really enjoyed your contributions, and we hope you can join us some other time again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Let's move on now. Let's join our sports team for news from that segment.